Hi guys, and welcome back to the Bird Photography Show with Glenn Bartley.
Hello.
And me, Jan Wegener. First of all, we want to thank all of you who've bought our Pro sets and have given us such amazing feedback, because we're so happy that they really help you to speed up your process and just give you much better result and actually save some of your older images that you thought you weren't able to edit. So thanks a lot for that, because that's exactly why we made them, to really help you. So seeing that they actually work and help you makes us very happy.
Absolutely. So Jan, I noticed that you are just back from a recent trip out into the Outback. Looked like a, kind of a fun little shoot.
Yeah, we went out 800 to 1,000 kilometers west of Brisbane, straight into the Outback basically. And it was a bit of a mixed bag, because the first spot where we got to, my friends previously had like hundreds of major Mitchell's cockatoos and a lot of birds, but that was at a different time of the year. And as we know, the seasons can have a big influence. This time around, there wasn't these paddy melons that the cockatoos feed on, so there was basically no cockatoos at all. And then there was a lot of water. The interesting thing with the Outback is you do want to have a lot of rain, because then all the birds are breeding. But for photography, you also want that water to disappear quickly, so there's just a few little puddles left where all the birds come in. But what happened this time, there was just so much water still around that all the birds were just kind of dispersed all over the whole area, and that made it very difficult for photography.
What else were you hoping to maybe find out there?
Well, there's a lot of nice little parrots around. One parrot I had never seen before and definitely never photographed before is the Burke's parrot. But that turned out to also be a very frustrating challenge, because these birds just like to come in whenever it's just too dark to take any photos basically. What happened on the trip was basically, after we went to the first spot, the first day, I said, we can't stay here. There's no point staying here. We're not going to get any photos. A friend of mine had just recently gone 300-400 kilometers further out into the Outback to a different station where it was much drier, with one little waterhole where he had good success. So I'm like, let's go straight there. So that's what we did the next morning. But on the way there, we stopped at a spot that's meant to be very good for the Burke parrots. We're standing there all afternoon, no birds. It's starting to get dark. We're like ISO 25,600 f4, but you're like, oh, I could still take a photo. And then it kind of flicks over like half an hour after sunset, where you're like, I'm done. Like
over.
30 Burke's parrots come in, sit on the ground, kind of sit everywhere, but there was just nothing you could do anymore. So that was a bit of a frustrating start to the trip. And then we went to the other spot, found it in the morning. It's always hard to actually find these spots in the morning as well. You go somewhere completely new, it's pitch black, you're driving around all these dirt tracks in your car trying to find the one little water hole.
It's actually a funny thing, like one of those almost like logistical things about photography. When you're going to a new site, you don't really want to go to a new site in the morning.
No.
Because you're racing, the light is just getting worse and worse. You're trying to desperately find this thing. If you're ever going to like a new spot, you want to go in the afternoon and go early, figure out where it is. Okay, here it is. I'll just now wait for the light to get good and come back. But in the morning, you're just racing and you just have that pressure building and you feel like you're just wasting your time trying to find this site.
Exactly, and we had this hand-drawn map from my friend, but we tried to kind of match it up with like satellite map on Google, and nothing would match up. And we're driving down this track and we're like, it's getting bright, but this is just the wrong direction. So we had to turn around. Well, eventually we found a water spot. We quickly did a setup, put a few perches out, and still got some nice images. Saw a few Burke's parrots again, but this time they did another annoying thing. They landed in a dead tree, flew onto the ground, walked to the water, took off.
Yeah, and obviously, I'm sure knowing your portfolio, you weren't really after photos of the birds on the ground.
Not exactly.
No, it's not really the look, especially for a parrot. You're kind of picturing them on a nice perch, or at least, something that they might get up off the ground. So Burke's parrot didn't really work out. Major Mitchell's didn't really work out. But what did you find? I'm sure you still found some interesting birds. I know there's lots of beautiful birds out there.
Yes, there's definitely a lot of Australian ringnecks, a lot of little zebra finches. I definitely got my best zebra finch photos, and also a lot of these really cool little mulga parrots. So we still managed to get some good photos by just setting up in the morning and in the afternoon at that one little waterhole. And that's actually the interesting part, right? There's hundreds and thousands of hectares of Outback, but then the best spot is just like one little waterhole where all these birds kind of congregate together. And by just setting up a few perches at the edge in a strategic position, because there was one spot with a dead tree where they always landed in first, and then we put our perches near that tree. So basically it was the next logical step for the parrots to land on.
So you've been home for a little while now, and you all know when I get home from a trip, I do my processing and I get a portfolio out there quickly. Have you done any editing yet, Jan? Have you got some shots for us to see?
Yeah, I brought you a few shots, but as you know, I'm a lot slower than you. I'll do so much videos and I do so much other things that I basically really only end up editing the images that I need for the YouTube videos. Having this little time actually using the presets helps me a lot, because at least with just one click, my raw file is basically fine. And if I then just run through my workflow quickly that I teach you in my masterclass, it just helps me to get the images that I need out quickly, because I really don't have much time at the moment to do a lot of image editing.
Well, I know the shoot wasn't exactly all you hoped it would be, but it did look like a great opportunity to test out sort of, you're used to shooting with the R5 for a while now. So how was it kind of having both the R3 and the R5 in the field? What did you find that you liked about the new camera?
It was actually very interesting using the R3 in the field, because as a body, like just the shape of the body where all the buttons are, it's definitely the best camera I've ever used in terms of the ergonomics. And it's also quite light. It's like just 1 kilo. So for instance, compared to a Nikon Z9, it's almost 400 grams lighter. So in that regard, just the body overall, it's really, really nice to handhold, really good in your hand. It has amazing video features. That's definitely where it shines for me. Like, it has better video autofocus, better video modes, better video codec. In terms of the video, it's far superior to any other Canon camera that I've used, at least. And one of the things that I really liked is that in video mode, you have tracking now with every single video mode autofocus. So you can have the tiny spot autofocusing field, and that will also still have eye tracking. So you can be very precise where you want to focus. And if, for instance, if there's a bird in the tree, you can now put the focus directly on the bird, and then it will just do the eye tracking in that small area. So that's very helpful. I found that very good.
Okay, so Jan, you talked enough about the video functionality. This is the bird photography show. So
Sorry.
if you're out just taking stills, of these birds, how did you find it? Like, did you find that you were using, when you were taking still photos, were you using the R3 more or the R5? Was there times that you wished you were using the R5, or were you happy just shooting with the R3?
I started out using the R3 the first few days where we're shooting glass that came into like a stick to drink. And there was pretty good because I knew the birds were pretty big. I don't have to do super big crops. Where I ran into challenge almost instantly was at the waterhole, because you have tiny zebra finches coming to your perch and you have huge glass coming to your perch. So one problem there is if you're shooting with the R3 and you sit back far enough that you can fit like a whole galah with the wings open into your frame, you're basically giving up any small birds that come to your perch, because if you crop into a zebra finch to make that a nice photo, even if it's a group of zebra finches, you're probably close to the 2000 pixel on the long side range. And this is where the R5 had a clear advantage, because if you shoot with an R5, you can still get a decent, probably 4,000 to 5,000 pixel image of the zebra finches and also still get the galah. So in these situations, I felt like the megapixels of the R5 have a good advantage.
I mean, obviously, the key advantages of the R3 are sort of the frame rate, having 30 frames a second when you need it. You don't always need it, but when you need it, it's certainly nice. And the autofocus parameters has a lot more customizability.
Well, definitely. I think the R3 is just a much more refined overall camera. Like, it basically does everything the R5 does, but a little bit better or a little bit more refined. Like, the viewfinder doesn't have any lag or blackout. So if you're shooting action on the R5, it kind of feels like a little bit choppy. And if a bird moves really fast, like up, sometimes you could miss it because you're kind of seeing the images you're taking rather than like the live EVF. So this is much easier to take with the R3 where it's no blackout. You can really just see, no lag, how you're moving the camera. And then autofocus is very good, but I didn't find it to be dramatically different from the R5 at this stage, at least for perch birds. I haven't done super much action. I'm still going to do that. But for perch birds, after the update to the 1.5.2 firmware of the R5, I think They behave kind of similarly. Maybe the R3 is a little bit stickier, but it's not like night and day. It really comes down to if you shoot a lot of action, because obviously that's where it really shines. And it also depends how close you can get to your subject. Because another thing is, for instance, you get 14-bit RAW files at the 30 frames per second. If you're using the R5 in the fast mode, you get 20 frames per second, but they're dumped down to just 12 bits. So you get much more noise and overall slightly worse image quality. So especially in darker environments, I think the R3 will also do a lot better. And I'm actually going to take it to the rainforest tomorrow to see if the autofocus overall does a much better job there. Because I found the R5, when it gets dark in the rainforest, it gets a lot less reliable. It starts to hunt a lot more. So this is something where I'm looking forward to testing out the R3 as well. And just 30 frames per second, if you're shooting actions, it's just epic, really. Like, you have this glass drinking, and whenever it takes off with the R5, you somehow always end up with like a pretty ugly sort of wing pose. It's almost like it just captures the wings when they're not fully spread. Whereas with the R3 now, I was actually able to capture every time basically a full wing stretch just because of the 30 frames per second. So when it comes to action, the better viewfinder, higher frame rate, better RAW files definitely give you a huge edge there.
And you know what Canon's setting us up for, of course. They've teased you with the megapixels, they've teased you with the fast frame rate and better autofocus, and you know what's coming is the R1 at some point, which will have, I'm gonna really I'd put a hefty bet on it. It will be at least 50 megapixels, probably, and it will of course shoot at 30 frames a second, probably more. And it will basically be a merger of these and even then some. So that's what they're just getting you used to, that 30 frames a second, and they're getting used to that nice high megapixels and being able to use it in the crop mode and crop in and have all that croppability. So be ready to open your wallet, people, because it's not going to be cheap.
It's not going to be cheap, but if it has all that, it definitely sets itself up to be the ultimate camera, really. So Glenn, there's actually one thing I've been meaning to talk to you about, and that's that book with the puffin down there. I'm just kind of tired of seeing that guy. Do you have any other book you can put there?
All right, well, I guess we'll put the puffin away, Jan. And as a matter of fact, I do have something we could put there. We'll put this nice hummingbirds book here, I think.
Hummingbirds, that's pretty awesome, but haven't you actually been working on a book about hummingbirds?
As a matter of fact, I have. Let me introduce you guys to my new book all about hummingbirds. I'm so excited, it's finally out. I've been, ultimately been working on this book for the last 15 years, to take all these pictures, but really seriously been working on producing this book for the last couple of years, and it's been published now with Princeton University Press. And so I'm really excited that the book is finally here.
So can you tell us a little bit more about it? Is it like a field guide?
Yeah, so it's not a field guide. I wanted to make a book that really celebrates all things hummingbirds. So something that's beautiful to look at, has great information, has informative charts and figures, explaining things like how iridescence works, and also to work on some of the science and the sort of conservation status of these different birds. So we've got charts at the back that show all the species with the range maps, but it's not a field guide. We're not trying to show every single species, but we do want to celebrate they're just such cool, amazing birds.
That sounds awesome. So how does one actually get to make a book? Like, is this something you initiated, or did someone approach you? How does it come about that you do an awesome book?
Basically, I put together a book proposal and I submitted it to this publisher who I had, my co-author, had some connections with. And so once we submitted the book proposal, we had a meeting with the publisher and they approved the book project. And at that point, contracts were signed, etc. And then we got to work on getting the images together. The hardest thing actually was the text, the information, because it's full. It's a full-on book with tons and tons of information in it. So writing all that text, I wrote a chapter, my co-author wrote a chapter, but we had some other natural history writers write some really interesting and informative text. And then once you start to have the text and the photos and the figures and the illustrations, you start to put it all together and lay out the book, and that's a whole nother process. It's really quite a process, but very rewarding in the end.
So I know you have like thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of images of hummingbirds. How do you pick the one that like goes into the cover? How do you pick the ones that go into the book? And what actually is that bird on the cover?
Yeah, that's a tricky one because of course, when you're, whatever you're going to put on the cover, you want that to really stand out and for it to draw people in, that they're going to want to pick the book up and hopefully buy it. So in this case, this is a black-billed streamer tail, and this is a hummingbird that lives only in Jamaica. What I did was I sort of picked 5 or 6 images that I thought would work well on the cover, and then I sent them to my co-author and to the graphic designer, and I think the main, the head of the publishing department over there, and this is the one that they thought would work the best. And I thought that it worked really well. Sometimes you're too close to your own photos to make a choice like that. So I think it was better for me to sort of say, pick one of these and let's go with that. So this was the one that got picked, the streamer tail, and I think it was a pretty good choice.
That's definitely an awesome image. And I know from my own experience that if you're looking for cover photos, it's a lot different than looking for other photos that can just go like in the middle of the book, because usually you need like space for text and it often has to be vertical. So I'm sure that's your experience as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's actually really crazy because when you compose a photo how you would want just the photo to be seen, it often really doesn't work as a cover shot. Oftentimes what you have to actually do is add canvas for the text to go, and potentially for other text, like if you've ever had images on the covers of magazines and stuff, it's always only certain ones that work. And I think both of us actually prefer to present our images cropped quite a bit tighter than what would traditionally work on a cover. So then you have to go back and see, like, could I crop that looser or add canvas or whatever? So the composition for a cover is always a little tricky.
Now tell us, is the book available already? When will it be available? And surely we can get some copies for our viewers of the Bird Photography Show to give away as well, no?
Well, of course, we're going to get some copies to give away to the loyal Bird Photography Show fans. So watch for that in an upcoming episode. We're definitely going to be giving some copies away. The book has been published in Europe, so it's available widely throughout Europe now. We'll put a link down in the description where you can pick that up. And the rest of the books are on a boat currently, heading over to the shore of North America. And technically the official publication date in North America is June 21st. They'll probably be out a little before then. But if you just can't wait to get your hands on a copy of Hummingbirds, you can check the link down in the description and you can pre-order it, and as soon as they get into the warehouse, they'll ship them off to you. Or you can wait till they're at your local bookstore, which hopefully won't be too long, early July or mid-July was probably when they'll start getting out to all the bookstores around North America.
And I think this is a great point now to wrap up the Bird Photography Show for this week.
Absolutely. We hope you've enjoyed the episode, and if you have, make sure you give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment down there, and definitely check out those links down in the description for Jan's masterclass, my ebooks, the pro sets, and of course, my new Hummingbirds book.
And subscribe to the channel. Bye guys!
See you next time.